In the previous video, we overloaded widgets using disconnect. In this video, we will be debugging PyQt5 with Python hooks. And we'll be creating the hook from the sys module. So here's a link to it from the Python documentation sys.excepthook. Sometimes PyQt5 GUI might mysteriously close and we see no error output in the console. Basically, our application crashed and we do not have much of a clue where to start to look for the cause. This is where Python hooks come to the help. In the previous video, we had to catch an exception when disconnecting the radio buttons from the tool button. And how did we know the exception would occur in this part of the code? So let's look at it again and let's comment out the code that made it work. So this is our code we had, and it's working with our workarounds. So we can click the radio buttons and the tool button and close it, and it works. Now, if we comment out some of the exception handling we put in here, like the whole disconnect call and the initialization by connecting the tool button to a method or a function that just calls pass. Now, when we run it like this, without this workaround and exception handling, we can see that it's running. It's red here, no error message, but the GUI didn't even show up. So it's running right now in Eclipse. It's a red square that shows it's running and nothing. So what happened? We don't really know, we have no clue. And the next thing is, if I comment out the programmatic click on one of the radio buttons, I think that's the only change I made here. If we run this now the GUI shows up and it all looks fine. We can change the tabs. But now when we click on a radio button, you can see the mouse and actually it crashed. So our PyQt5 program is crashing and we get no output whatsoever and we might not have a clue where to start to look. Fortunately, Python comes with an exception hook and it comes from the sys module. So we can import sys, create a method that expects 3 values, and you can read more about it on the URL I showed a moment ago. And we're also importing Qt widgets for a message box. We could use tkinter, but as we're using PyQt5, might as well do this way. And here's the thing. So we assign our method catch exceptions, sys.excepthook. And within the method, we accept those 3 values and we only use one of them, and we'll display the value, the exception value, in a message box. That's the entire code that's necessary to get started. Very little code. And because we are assigning a function here in the module, all we have to do to use it is import it. We just have to import the module. So now when we run it with our exception handling, previous exception handling commented out, when we run it now, the GUI comes up, and when we click on a radio button, this is the exception that was raised. Value disconnect failed between clicked and all its connections. And that gives us a starting point. So now we know something is not working, there's an exception, and that's the message of the exception. Now we can do one better even. So the exception hook here is very little code. But what we can also do is we can save it, so to speak. So we can make an old hook, which is of type sys.excepthook. And we are passing in those 3 values. I saved this under catch exceptions print. So the only difference is those 2 lines of code. And now when we import this guy and run it, and once it's up, click on one of the radio buttons, we get the exception in the message box because we're calling the message box. And when we click OK, it prints out the same error message, but it also gives us the link where in the code it failed. So we can jump directly to the problem. So here, this is the problem, and we found it by simply importing those few lines of code, sys.excepthook, just importing it here, and that's great because otherwise we really have no idea what went wrong. In this video, we debugged PyQt5 with Python hooks, and in the next video, we will be creating executables with PyInstaller.